everyone, I'm Eszter Kovacs, co-founder and CEO of DroneTalks, and today I have the luck to talk with Brandon from Skydio, who's a vice president of the regulatory and policy department. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Eszter, thanks so much.
So I'm super excited. I actually wanted to have an interview with Skydio now 2 years, and today finally happened. So it was to come to the commercial UAV, right, I think. Yeah. And because you are a great company, I think Skydio just grew, and from nothing. One day I didn't know Skydio, and another one you own the whole market, So I'm just wondering, how did you decide, you personally, to work for Skydio, and what's your background if someone don't know you?
Right, well, first of all, thanks so much, Eszter. As a long-time listener, it's great to be on the show. I have been interested in aviation for years. I grew up actually flying and got my pilot's license when I was in high school, so I've had my license for 20 years. And then grew up as an Air Force officer and worked on much larger drones, of course. And then after that was in the government and helped to serve on the committee that oversees the integration of drones in the United States as a regulator, and then pivoted to Skydio because I could see in my last life as a policy official that the industry was leaning towards autonomy. And the companies that get there first will stand to benefit along with their end users. And so that was the value proposition for me to join Skydio. We're at the leading edge, but autonomy is a theme, of course, that companies across the space are chasing.
That's really impressive. So you've seen the potential, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna jump on it, right? So it's crazy. So I'm just wondering, Skydio is pretty huge, and there are a lot of use cases. So what's hot now? What do you see? What are the biggest and most advancing use cases currently?
Right.
With
I
Skydio?
think there's something I like to call the axiom of adoption, and that means, what we see is that the areas in where drones are most widely used are those in which traditional methods are either dangerous, inefficient, or expensive. And where you see that the most is in infrastructure inspection. Far and away, most commercial uses of drones are for infrastructure inspection. And to give you an example, we recently secured a waiver in the United States that allows Dominion Energy, one of the largest utility providers, to fly Skydio drones autonomously at 40 plus power plants across 7 different US states. And that means that a plant manager, instead of having to rappel down the side of towers that are hot and dangerous and dirty, can actually just stand wherever she wants and fly an autonomous smart drone inside and outside of structures and inspect a plant in hours instead of days and weeks. And it's that kind of value proposition that gets us excited, because we're talking to the plant managers who are thrilled to death that they now have this smart little flying robot that can make their life easier. And that's why a lot of us are in drones, is to make that real and not just science fiction. Of course, and Skydio is not the only company doing that. We're just happy to be a part of this growing global ecosystem.
I cannot agree more. And I know this, you know this, but I'm sometimes under the impression the regulators don't know, or even they understand it, but there is somehow like a barrier. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, how can we break those barriers? Or what's your experience? Like, how can we go and educate, and how can we get this adoption in countries which are not, that advanced regarding drones? Because you have the advantage of knowing regulation, policy. You come from those backgrounds. So how can we get into those countries?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think shows like this actually make a lot of difference, right? Many regulators are attuned to your show, and I think that's important. And seen is so often believing, right? When airplanes were first invented, people were terrified. They weren't excited about flying in planes. The same thing is true of vehicles. People were horrified. They were called red flag laws. In many countries, when cars first came on the roads, there was a law that said you had to have a person walk in front of the car waving a red flag because they were so scary and so dangerous. And we see some of that with drones today, but the more people are exposed to technology, the easier it is to wrap their arms around them. And I think what we've seen is that regulators are increasingly getting their hands dirty. They're going and they're flying drones. they're actually stepping into eVTOL simulators, larger drones that carry people and packages, for instance, or small flying robots like ours. And that is really important, right? To get people out of their offices, into the field, actually using stuff, and it demystifies the technology.
Yeah, I think this is super important. And when I go these events in Europe, I'm not sure what's your experience, but I really rarely see the regulators there,
Yeah.
and I have a feeling, hey, somehow we need to drag them all out from their office and bring them all there, I think it's different in the US because you have FAA, but in Europe we have like 30-something countries, and we have maybe 5 regulators in an event.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, do you have any experience? What's the flow? How we can get to those countries, or how can we talk to maybe policymakers, or what's the action? What we can take?
I think the best advice I can give is that policy is storytelling by another name, and we in the community need to tell better stories. So when you approach a regulator or a policymaker, you don't lead with the technology, right? You don't talk about the specs of the drone, whatever kind of drone it is. You talk about the value that it provides to the plant manager that is safe and goes home to her family in a way that wasn't possible before drone technology. And having end users actually tell that story makes a huge difference. And we've certainly found that with the FAA, with EASA, with other regulators, that having end users tell their own story of value, whether it's people inspecting bridges or soldiers on a battlefield, that really does start to create this tidal wave of interest, and it helps regulators lean forward to solve problems.
From first hand,
Right.
I think that's a very important message. The benefits are unlimited, and we need to kind of get them and in one hand and explain them, because there's so many benefits of drones, and we just don't know. I think even I don't know all, There is a lot of time when you want to use drones for one purpose, and in a way, in a process, you figure out, hey, I can also do this with the same drone. So I think that's a good point. And as a last question, what do you think? What's next? So what's hot? What should come, or what's coming up?
Right. What's next is automation to a degree that we haven't seen before.
Oh.
That's what we're working on. Of course, many other companies are as well. We've released over the last year something called Skydio 3D Scan that lets you autonomously inspect infrastructure and create digital twins. And for instance, that technology has recently been used in Ukraine to create a record of Russian atrocities that will allow rebuilding and could even facilitate war crimes for the many atrocities that have taken place. And that's the kind of thing that you could do with a manual drone. It just takes days and weeks with expert pilots, and it's very dull, it's very boring stuff. But AI-enabled devices can automate that. So the future is drones are tools that work for you and not the other way around.
I cannot agree more, and I think also this one control center, multiple drones vision should come earlier than later, I think, because this is how we can really scale and make the difference, and I think this is what we need to talk about now. We don't need to talk about this one pilot, one drone, short range use cases, because it's 5 years before to me, but maybe I'm drastic here, and I am free to say that. But what do you think on it? And criticize me,
No, you're right.
Brandon, please, criticize me.
We like to say at Skydio, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed, and that is the case. So a year ago, we worked with a major railroad to get a waiver that allows that railroad to fly drones across tens of thousands of miles of its national railway network, the largest in the US, from one site in the United States. So an engineer at her desk can control drones anywhere.
Exactly,
And so that is actually happening right now. It's just not evenly distributed. But you mentioned a control center where like a NASA-style room where people fly drones, and those will exist. But what you're also going to see is that drones are being democratized.
Yeah.
So that you can fly drones remotely from a cell phone, from a tablet, and the drone works for you, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to precisely control it because the drone knows what to do, and it knows what data you want. And that's the end state that is exciting. It's maybe not the control room, but you just getting a report with some pictures, and you not having to do anything else than drink a latte and tell your boss how things are going at the plant. That's the future of autonomous drones.
I cannot agree more, because the users need an easy use, solution, and I think this is also what you talk about, because it needs to be as easy as possible for the user as well, right? And it's fantastic. Thank you so much, Brandon. It was really exciting. I think I love this discussion, and thanks for coming to our booth.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.